Hey everybody, it's Cal Ryder here, and I am with Tom Perfectolad.
Oh,
Tom, how you doing?
sorry, I'm just watching the screen for it to load.
And I
There we
am
go.
Tom Perfectolad. Oh, you know what I need to do? Give me 1 second because I'm going to hear myself
Sorry,
back if I don't close this. There we go. I think we're set up now. It's a little bit confusing. This is our first YouTube live where we've done anything like this. So we've had a few technical difficulties along the way. Some of you may have noticed I had to delete the earlier scheduled post for this and reset it up under another URL. Technology can be a little tricky sometimes, but I think we've made it.
I'm finding it really distracting having it going next to me, so I'm going to turn that slightly away.
So everybody, I want to welcome you to our first Gear365 live. This is something that Tom, you've really helped inspire this in a lot of ways. You've been an incredible source of inspiration for me, and not only for me, but for so many people out there who are finding their way into the world of gear.
Oh, it's lovely to hear.
Oh, go ahead. What was that?
No, I was just saying right back at you.
I just want to real quick say hey to a few people that have joined the room. Mark Weber, another awesome leather brother of mine out on the East Coast. Jack Robbins, Black Wolf Harris. It's David, Leather Gloves. It's awesome to see you. Pup Boner, all these other awesome folks that have joined. And so what Thomas and I really want to do, what Tom and I want to do is answer your questions. Like if you have any questions about the world of gear, the world of kink, anything like that. If you're a newcomer to the world of gear, we would really like to be able to spend some time with you today and to help answer any questions that you may have.
And I'd just like to caveat, in the UK it's 7 p.m, so the reason I'm drinking red wine is absolutely fine. It's not 11 a.m. as it is where it looked like I was having a problem.
That is totally respectable. I'm out here in California where it's 11 o'clock, so I am still doing my coffee with Bailey's. It's just regular coffee, I promise. But yeah, I'm just wondering if anybody has any questions to get started with. Otherwise, we're going to jump in and just talk about a few things. So Rob M. Just asked, how do you feel, Tom? How did you feel, Tom, the first time you wore leather pants?
Oh, okay. Well, the first time I wore leather pants, it took me a really long time to get any. I was always just jackets for ages. And it was only when I sort of really started exploring uniform that I properly tried pants. So had lots of random biker ones, never any good. But the ones I'm wearing at the moment were my 30th birthday present to myself, and I consider them to be the first proper pair that I wore. And spent way too much money on them, money I didn't have, and it really did feel absolutely epic. And having them very slightly tailored definitely made a difference. And I'm now a big believer in spending that bit extra to have them fitted to you, because I have gone through hundreds and hundreds of crappy leather pants, leather shirts, whatever it is. And yeah, it did feel awesome. I really felt like I'd arrived home.
Nice. I actually just had a really great experience last night with a fellow Gear365er, fellow Sacramentan, and we went for a impromptu motorcycle ride yesterday. I posted some of the photos on the Gear365 Facebook page. But he had the complete Tom of Finland look to his outfit. And actually, if I can share a really cool story about this real quick. So he was in the beautiful mirrored sunglasses, the meerkat, classic 1960s, 1970s vintage motocop jacket. And he was wearing a pair of chaps over a pair of blue jeans. And so we rode out to a small mountain town called Placerville, California. It's an old gold rush town. And we found this alley where we were going to take some photos together. And while we were in the midst of this photo shoot, a woman happened by and said, "You guys look great. You look just like Tom of Finland." And we were elated because out here, we're not in San Francisco or Los Angeles. We're in small Placerville, California, out in the mountains. And they still knew who Tom of Finland was. And so that acceptance is definitely growing. But where I was going with this is that when we got back to the house last night, he does not have a pair of leather jeans of his own. And I've been gifted with various pieces of leather throughout my journey of coming into leather and the leather community. And so took them back into my closet last night and found my first ever fitted pair of leather jeans that I got from 665 in Los Angeles. Put them on him. He looked great in them, and I sent him home in them. And it's just a very meaningful experience when you, because leather is, I've said this so many times, leather is such a deep part of who we are. So when you get to share that with somebody else who gets it, it's a very meaningful experience.
No, I totally agree. I was given one of my favorite leather jackets, and not particularly valuable, not particularly amazing, but it really, I've still got it. It really meant something, it having been given, and it's still one of my absolute favorites. Yeah, totally agree with that. Totally agree with that. It's a very personal thing to give someone. And in the US, I think you've got a bit more of a tradition of things like giving the first Muir cap or cover, as I think you lot call them, don't you? Which I don't see as much in the UK, but I know it's a lot more important, sort of like old guard tradition, isn't it?
It is a little more old guard. And I've never personally been surrounded by leather sirs or leather boys that follow the old guard mentality. They're definitely out there. I've just personally not been in a relationship like that, but I have definitely been gifted with jackets or boots or gloves from people I cared about. And just to wear their
You
gear,
gave
so
my cap badge. You gave me my cap badge.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So it's actually been a question that I've been asked quite a bit. What is this? And so there are various cap badges that you can put on your cap, whatever is meaningful for you personally. But this is a U.S. World War II Army officer's badge. It's a replica, but you can get these on eBay for like $10 or $15. But that's what that is.
That was me thinking it was a family heirloom.
It is. It is absolutely from eBay. Real quick, Black Wolf Harris asks, what was your very first leather purchase?
Mine was a classic motorcycle jacket, which I kept up until about 2 years ago. Actually, I still had it when I was 11 years old, which I bought secondhand.
You got it when you were 11?
Yeah, in the UK we have something called car boot sales, and I remember seeing it, paid £5 for it, and I absolutely loved it. And I had that for many, many years. And when I moved, I had to get rid of some leather gear, and I sold it. Part of me was a bit sad about that, but I hadn't worn it probably in about a decade, and I felt it should go off somewhere new. And it did go to the gearhead, and I sold it for what I paid for it. So it sort of had a bit of a full circle. We did quite a meaningful thing. He bought it for me for a £5 after I'd paid a £5 for it. And yeah, he still wears it. He's in Australia, and I still see the odd picture of him wearing it on Facebook. So that's pretty cool.
I love that. See, it's the same thing. You're sharing parts of yourself. That's your history right there that lives on.
Yeah, still love it. Is that yours?
So this is not my first leather jacket. If you can believe it, I got my first leather jacket. I somehow talked my parents into getting me one when I was 10 years old, but it wasn't a classic motorcycle style like this. It was just like a real basic kind of bomber style jacket. And I was never allowed to wear it to school because they were always afraid it was going to get stolen out of my locker. But when I was 15 years old, I had my first job and I'd saved up to get a motorcycle jacket. And my mom was abhorred by this. She's like, no, don't get one of those. You're going to look ridiculous in it. You don't want to look like a thug or anything. Don't do that. Don't spend your hard-earned money on it. I'm like, Mom, this is what I want to get. This is what I want. So I went down to the mall to get it. And of course she followed me there. I was only 15, right? You're still kind of under your parents' lock and key at that age. So I went into Wilson's Leather and found the jacket that I wanted. And she made me get like this jacket that was huge on me. And she's like, you're going to grow into it. But this was it. This was the jacket that I got when I was 15 years old. I had my senior pictures taken in this jacket. I wore this jacket to Europe when I went to Europe as a teenager. So this has been on your continent there. I had a lot of firsts in this jacket, but this is it right here. It's this old Wilson's jacket from 1995, and still have it to this day. I don't wear it anymore. I don't wear it as much as I used to, but you know, a lot of newcomers, when they're coming into gear, one of the things that they're really nervous about is how expensive leather can be, or gear in general can be. And they see these guys in fancy Langlitz jackets, or you know, all these European brands. I got to tell you, this is the jacket that I wore all throughout my teen years and all throughout my early 20s, late 20s, early 30s. I didn't get any other leather until I was like 32, 33 years old. So this is it, you know, but it didn't change who I was or what I was into.
And I agree, particularly from the point of view of the cost of the gear. In my favourite jacket that I own at the moment costs 20 quid, and I got it off Facebook Marketplace. Did have to drive 6 hours to get it because the guy wouldn't post it, but it was well worth the drive. And for £20, I was really happy to do it. And I've got Langlitz, and I still think I prefer my 20 quid TT jacket. And I think it actually looks a bit better when it's shined up when I've polished it. So yeah, I totally agree.
I would say the most important thing for newcomers to realize, it is not about having name brand gear. You're not going to be able to come out the door having all this premium gear. The key is allowing yourself to embrace gear as a whole and to enjoy whatever it is that you do have. And Christopher Collette, another really good friend of mine, he had just made a comment about Wilson's Leathers. It was the only leather shop around, and I grew up in a rural town too. There was no other leather shops, and so I remember just like being 8, 9, 10 years old, walking past Wilson's Leather. I think back then it was called Berman's, but oh fuck, the smell in there was amazing. So like this taboo place to go into, but I loved it.
Someone's just asked, is £20 cheap? In US dollars, that would probably be about $30, $35.
That'd be pretty inexpensive overall. That'd be pretty inexpensive, and you can get some great jackets and things like that at a like, you know, at thrift stores or on eBay and things. But what I would always suggest, hey, what's going on, Handsome Devil? Special guest star here, Scott Bluff Biker. And Scott, you were really big too back in the day with like eBay and things. You got a lot of your gear online when you were starting off, but just yeah, beware of what it is that you're getting. It's always worth trying to save up your money a little bit and get something worthwhile versus spending only like $10 or $15 on something, because you're probably not going to be happy with the results. But
yeah, it was a lot of trial and error, and I realized the more gear, if it's shiny and it creaks a lot and it's thick, it's good leather, and you don't find that a lot on eBay. So my advice is maybe just to see the gear in person, because a lot of times the pictures on eBay don't give it, are not true representations. And so I think I've learned my lesson that even though it might save a little bit of money, you end up not wearing it and it just collects dust. So yeah, eBay, when it first came out, was used to take a big part of my paychecks, and only a handful of that gear from that era still exists.
Real quick, Jerome, I think it was no, Patrick Robb says, Cal, kiss Scott. Real quick.
Filth, absolute filth.
Harry, it's good to see you. And just everybody that's joined the live chat here, it's great to see you. We're going to take your questions, and it's really good to see you. I think one of the main topics that Tom and I really wanted to touch on today was, we both are incredibly honored to receive so many messages on Instagram, on Recon, here on YouTube, from newcomers, and newcomers to gear from any age group, who have reached out to us and just said how much our videos or our shares, the shares they're seeing from other people out there on the internet, are helping them to embrace their own gear desires. So Tom and I wanted to come on here today and talk to those of you who are new to the world of gear, who are just now realizing your love of leather or rubber or sports gear, whatever it is you're into, and taking those first steps to embrace that. And if you have any questions to get started on your journey or anything, we'd really love to be here for you and to help you feel like, yeah, you do belong.
Oh, Sean Brackett's asked something interesting. I'm fortunate enough to be able to save for a jacket. I'm wondering if you'd recommend Perfecto or Lange, which obviously by my username, I am a little bit biased.
I mean, I think Perfecto, you get the most bang for your buck with a Perfecto. It's high quality. It'll last a lifetime. You don't have to save like for years. You know, it's basically you get a really high quality jacket right off the rack. The downside, of course, is it's not custom made, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's perfect. Charlie posted a few months ago about your debacle with Langlets. You had a Langlets that was cut. He went to Portland, Oregon, to get a jacket custom made, custom fitted, and it came back 3 sizes too large.
I still can't figure that one out. But yeah, I went up to Portland to get my jacket custom fitted, and it came back completely fit incorrectly. And it took me a few go rounds with them to get the jacket that I do have made. But I don't know. Thomas, what's your preference? Perfecto over Langlets?
I've got to say for dress, the Langlets. I don't wear the Langlets nearly as much as I wear. This is like my day-to-day jacket, the 519, and I do love it. I've got to say, shouldn't have bought it, couldn't afford it, don't regret it at all. But I think there's a lot of cachet in owning the Langlets. I think a lot of guys feel it's something to aspire to. I certainly did, and I only own the jacket. I don't own the pants because I couldn't justify the cost. My Langlets jacket is worth more than my car, which sort of shows you the level of car I'm driving at the moment. And yeah, I must admit, I do feel like the dog's bollocks when I'm in the Langlets. Value for money probably would go for the Perfecto, and if you get the right cut one, you can make it look good with the uniform look for sure. I think I'm a bit too short, actually, to be honest with you, for it to work properly with the uniform, because it comes down quite low on me. But I think if you're taller, I think there's some guys who absolutely rock Perfecto with leather shirt and tie. I mean, it's looking very good on you at the moment. You're in a Perfecto.
There are different, what I would say is there are different cuts of the Perfecto from shot. The 118 is a little boxier, it's a little baggier. The 618 of various jackets are cut a little more form fit and are a little bit lower riding. So Sean Brackett, young man, you and I still need to get into that Shot Perfecto store. And I believe you still have a pair of neoprene chaps in my gear closet
somewhere here
with your name on them. So you may want to come on to California.
And they restocked the inventory now. So
we have a Shot Perfecto store.
There's actually two of them. There's actually 2 Perfecto stores in San Francisco. So they're just waiting for you to pick out your jacket.
I just want to keep the conversation moving so we're not, there's a lot of questions in here that I want to address real quick. Joe Porter is asking, I work in a profession. That means I have to be careful with my private life. What advice would you give to me and others in that situation who want to get into leather? If I can real quick, I'll just start out that answer by saying, I am on here talking about it is okay to be yourself. Go out there and be yourself with pride. But there are certain instances where you do have to separate your professional life or your family life from maybe your gear life, your fetish life. Not everybody. Some people do a perfect job of blending them all together. I also work in a profession where I work in a media industry. So although my coworkers would be comfortable with seeing me in gear, and I have worn gear to work plenty of times, I have to be very careful about our company image and that getting out. So I do have to keep that separate. So Cal Ryder is obviously not my real name. Cal, those are my initials actually, but I've just done a decent job of trying to keep my professional life and my gear life separate online. And as far as going to work in gear, there's simple ways you can do that. Like just wearing a jacket to the office, a pair of boots, a pair of gloves. You can still go to the office and experience your gear without going dressed as, say, like Tom of Finland. You know what I mean? There's a difference there.
It also helps that you ride a motorcycle, but that explains when he wears the pants. But I think gradually, like Cal said, it's basically one. It's just incremental. You just come with a jacket, and that's all you really need to do. Just start with that. I think because leather means so much to us, we over exaggerate what it means to other people as well. And quite honestly, most people don't even care. If they do, they probably have a leather fetish as well, or there's something else that they associate it with. But those would be few and far between. So,
but you know, I think it's even more than them not caring. I don't think people notice.
yeah.
I remember when I first started wearing gear out, I felt really self-conscious, and now when I talk to people about it, saying to them the strong likelihood is if someone was asked to describe you after seeing you 10 seconds later, they probably wouldn't even remember what you were wearing. And I do know people who've got some absolutely epic gear, and they'd love to wear it out, but they never do because they definitely feel too self-conscious. And quite frankly, I mean, especially if you live in a city, people don't notice anything. I mean, my God, some of the things you see in London, but I don't live in London. I live in a small market town, and I gear up, and nobody's ever said anything. Nobody's ever commented, as far as I'm aware. And to be honest with you, I'm not sure I'd care that much if they did, really. I mean, there's plenty of worse things I can imagine being known for than wearing a lot of leather. I mean, I'm quite happy with that.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. Icon of Recon is another good friend of mine on Instagram, and just asked an important question. This is one that I wanted to touch on, and I just lost it. Here we go. He asks, what do you do if you are into kink and gear, but you live in a small town where it's barely okay to be gay, let alone be into gear?
I can certainly see that being a challenge. I mean, there is a lot to be said, I think, in cases like this for talking and not feeling like you're isolated. I mean, I think it must have been terrible before the net, because we do have that instant connection with so many hundreds of thousands of people around the world, just like we're doing right now. But yeah, it is a challenge. The only thing you can do is express yourself the way you want to, and gear up. And if you're able to, I think try and travel to people. But if you can't, I mean, there is a whole internet community out there. There's loads of us. No one else in my town who's into kink, who's into gear, into leather. I mean, you know, it's not even as though they're not into the same kinks as me. There is no one here. I live in a town of 10,000 people, and I've lived here for a good few years, and it's still just me.
What I actually asked this question on the Gear365 Facebook group about a month ago. The question I posed is, what advice would you have for a newcomer who is into gear but lives in a rural community and doesn't really have anybody out there nearby to connect with? And I had 25 different responses to this question. One of them, of course, was from a friend of mine who says Gear365, and they're referring to the Facebook group, is a great place to start and meet other folks into gear. It's become a strong community. The brotherhood, the sisterhood they feel here, and the people they've met are a strong part of their leather community, their leather club. They've communicated with people inside this Facebook group, and they've helped to not feel so alone. Other words of advice from people here would be to save up the money to be able to travel to some of those places where those gear events are happening. whether that be going to London for Pride. You were just there, Tom, a week or so ago.
Loved it.
Folsom, Berlin, coming to San Francisco, going to New York, going to these centralized areas where there are some gear events, just to experience that.
You can make it the most or as little as you want it to be. You don't have to go to every party, every event. You know, you can just check it out, check the scenery, and say, oh, maybe I'll go to that. So,
my friend, in one of the responses from the Facebook group, said, for me, my leather community is mainly people they'd never met. Living where they live as a gay leather man is easy, but the scene is very, very small. They don't feel like they have any true leather family near them. So for them, just following and starting to get to know people on Instagram and Facebook and other communities has really helped them to connect, to not feel so isolated. And Icon of Recon, I know you and I have talked about this in the past. I grew up in rural Minnesota in a time where being gay was definitely not accepted. And I felt very alone. And for me, my outlet was getting out there online and meeting people and to have conversations like we're having right now, where you realize you're not alone. You're actually a part of this really incredible worldwide community of people who are either gay into gear, they're straighter into gear, they're non-binary, but whatever their orientation, their gender expression is, that's irrelevant. The fact that they have these desires for gear is what unites us in a very deep and very primal way. And
I would definitely echo that. I mean, I met yesterday a gay couple who live locally who moved here, and got chatting to them on Grindr, and they said, "Oh, let's go for some drinks," and they're very hot. It's a shame they're not into leather because they'd look really good. They're not into leather, and I was trying to explain to them, you know, if you're into gear, you automatically have a sort of brethren around you, and you have an automatic connection with loads of other people, and it's why I would feel very comfortable going to an event by myself. I went to Pride by myself and did the parade with Recon. I didn't know anyone else who was going, but I felt quite comfortable doing it because I knew there'd be some leather guys. I knew there'd be the London Leathermen there. I knew there'd be people off Recon that I'd recognise. And it's nice, you've automatically got that group. You are part of that brethren. I always think of it as leather brethren in my head. And we do automatically share a connection. And I really like that. We are all united.
A very good friend of mine, Leather Spain on here, Javi, I just want to say hey to him. And there's so many other people here I want to address real quick. But he had just made the comment, people are afraid of things that they don't know. If they're never exposed to somebody in full leather, it will be strange for them. And then some of them will reject it. But the key is to be yourselves. And that takes a tremendous amount of confidence. That takes a tremendous amount of empowerment to be able to get to that stage. But for people who are brand new into gear, as you and I, Scott, we all were once upon a time, I say, do you guys remember like the first time you ever stepped out of the house wearing a motorcycle jacket?
Yeah, the heart just beating so fast, and anybody's like, oh, I hope no one looks at me.
I thought I was proper badass.
Quite an emotional thing, like, oh my gosh, though, everybody's staring at me. How can Scott wear a leather jacket? I had the same experiences too.
Tom, what were you saying?
I was saying, yeah, I felt exactly the same. I'm really impressed that you wore yours to high school. I didn't. Yeah, I felt proper badass, but faking it, essentially. But no, loved it. And I'm not going to lie, when I'm on the tube and I'm in full gear on the way to or from an event, I love seeing my reflection, thinking, yeah, I fucking love this. I love being out in this. And if you told me that when I was like 15, that I'd be doing that in public, I would never have believed you. Not in a million years.
I had the same experiences. When I was starting off and wearing my jacket in high school and 19, 20 years old. I was nervous as hell. And I thought everybody's eyes were on me. Everybody was staring at me. And the thing is that's not true. You will definitely attract attention when you wear leather in public, because I think people have this natural curiosity about it. There is something that sparks a little bit of danger and a little bit of excitement, but they aren't typically sexualizing it maybe the way that we all are. So they're not most likely going to judge you in a negative way. But just going out there in those rural communities and wearing something as simple as a pair of boots, a pair of gloves, a jacket, um, you will still be able to feel who you are. And I'm speaking specifically leather right now. There are so many other fetishes out there, whether you're into rubber or sports gear, or what have you. We can touch on that in a bit, but just wearing little pieces of it out and about, you will go out there and you will realize you made it through the day just fine. And anybody that did say anything to you, that's on them. And I know that's really easy to say, but what kind of, I'm going to just talk about this for a quick second. Scott, Tom, what negative experiences have you had in gear, and how did you overcome that?
Honestly, I can't think of too many negative ones.
Have people ever made any comments to you, Tom?
Okay, so when I first started wearing the 519, which I only bought last month, went to the pub in it, and I think someone called me Fonzie. Again, I've been called worse than that. But it was a joke. It was someone I knew at the pub. It was very light-hearted, and I've called him far worse over the years. No, I'm like Scott. I can't actually think. I've had people mistake me for a policeman twice. When I've been in full uniform, I've been mistaken for a bike cop. When I've been out in London, but no, I've never had, other than my mum, who does not like my leather gear. No, I don't have had anyone say anything remotely negative.
The most common experience I've had these experiences where I've thought people are laughing, their eyes are gawking at me, they're judging me, and I've realized most of that is in my head. I feel like everybody's eyes are on me, and there's like this like internal shame that I've had to get over and realize there's really nothing to be ashamed about. There really isn't. At the end of the day, human sexuality, fetish, gear, they're all completely normal things. It's a part of the human experience, right? Once you allow yourself, once you accept the fact that, yeah, okay, I this is something that's very spiritual to me, it's very emotional to me, it's very sexual to me, you realize that's all right, you feel a little bit more empowered to go out there and wear a jacket or something like that out there in public and realize that other people's opinions really don't matter.
Well,
this
look, if you get opinions, it's almost always positive.
Mm-hmm.
It's always like, nice jacket. Oh, you look really good in that. Oh, where do you get that? I never get any, I don't recall any explicitly negative comments, you know? So
there's
I had pictures
someone
of me just because I was walking by.
Real quick,
who I've spoken to about this.
I'll get into the group here in a little bit to approve you on your Gear365 membership. EJC says people surprisingly always give me admiring positive comments when they wear their gear in public. Folks can really surprise you. Pup Boner says empower yourself with the power within the gear that you wear. From Pup Boner's experience, walk tall and be proud. Local Pride Parade is a great way to feel the power within. And I have to completely piggyback on that. Just about every single experience that I've ever had, whether it be in Minnesota or here in California, in Chicago, Illinois, wherever it's been, has been tremendously positive. And as I said yesterday, I was talking about this earlier in the call. We were in Mountain Town, California yesterday, Placerville, California, and a woman still recognized Tom of Finland and thought that was very cool. And I expected that to go completely differently. People will surprise you.
There's someone watching at the moment called Kyle, who's a mate of mine, and we've talked about this in the past.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've always found, like when mates have straight mates have commented on my leathers, there's always been some kind of joke, like Fonzie, pretty unoriginal. However, a few minutes later, it's like, yeah, it's pretty cool, actually, can I try it on? And all men, I think, straight or gay, young or old, black or white, whatever, I think all men want to feel badass in a motorcycle jacket. And I think quite often, if there's anything negative, it's they're a bit jealous that you're rocking it and they're not.
Yeah.
And loads of my straight mates have borrowed jackets of mine, particularly things like Perfectos, you know, something that's a bit timeless, classic, because it looks cool. And people want to feel cool. And, you know, like you talk about, there's all those associations with leather. You know, it's a bit dangerous. It's a bit badass. And yeah, I think men particularly, I'm sure there are plenty of women who feel the same, but men particularly, they want to feel a bit dangerous. And yeah, I think a lot of the time, any looks you're going to get more jealousy. It's like, you know, I wish I could be that brave, or I wish I could look that good. Because when you're in good leathers, I stand about 10 feet tall when I'm feeling well dressed, and you look confident, you feel confident, you look good. Even if you're not into leather or recognise it's a sexual thing, you know, it's a pretty damn good outfit, isn't it?
It's a damn sexy outfit, that's for sure. And I want to touch on something you just said there for a second, because yeah, we have posted the videos and the photos where we're out in public wearing full gear. But that's not something that we started doing on day one. That has taken a tremendous amount of confidence and work to get there. But one of my absolute favorite looks is to wear a motorcycle jacket with a pair of jeans, just a regular pair of blue jeans and a pair of boots. I think that is a timeless look that's incredibly sexy. And 99% of the time when you see me out there at the grocery store or doing everyday things, it's just me wearing a pair of blue jeans and a motorcycle jacket. But I'm still representing who I am and what I'm into, and yet I'm not having to go full on. But eventually, you know, that video that I posted last month about flying in full leather, I was nervous as hell when I did that. And he can attest to it. He can attest to it. But this is something that Everett Learson from Mr. Fetish Europe, I think is his current title. I might be getting that incorrectly, but he had been an inspiration to me. I had seen him fly to his various events in full leather. And I kept thinking, if he has the ability to do that, if he can fly from Europe to the United States in full bluff leather, then there's no reason why I can't fly from California to Illinois, from California to Minnesota, from California to Omaha, Nebraska in full leather.
And you got some nice comments on the way there too.
Yeah. Real quick, and I don't want to hold up the conversation too much, but on one of those flights, I was in leather jeans, and this was actually my first time flying in full leather, and nervous as hell. And I had barely gotten to the gate when an employee from Southwest Airlines stopped me and said, "I love those jeans. Where did you get those jeans?" And I'm telling him where I got them. And he called himself a bit of a leather collector, and was just all about, you know, like those jeans. And it's been an extremely positive experience all the time. So every time.
Well, I'm still deciding whether or not I'm flying to Berlin in September in full gear. Not because I have a particular problem with flying in full gear, because Heathrow Airport will be full of Leathermen on their way to Folsom, but more the comfort, because I think my feet are going to be mashed after a week in my boots as it is, and I'm wondering whether to try and give my feet a bit of a break before it starts. But yeah, still considering that. I can't quite pull off the sneakers and leather jeans like some people can.
Leather Spain wrote a few moments ago, and this is something we had touched on. We touched on a little bit ago. He had written, when he goes out to events, he's been met with negative comments like, "Oh, you're wearing cheap leathers. You should be wearing a Langlets if you want to be a real leather man." And we talked about this at the beginning of this chat. For newcomers, you're not going to be able to afford premium gear right out the door. But even as if you've been into leather your whole life, you've been wearing leather or gear your whole life, let's be honest, things like Langlet's leather, shot Perfectos, they're expensive as hell. And most of us don't make the kind of money to be able to go out there and buy things like that. So it's not about the leather that you own. It's about wearing leather in general. It's not about a name brand. And I got to tell you right now, anybody that gives you grief because you're not wearing premium leather, you're not wearing Langlets, that person is extremely judgmental, completely stuck up, and is not like most of the leather community that overall is pretty welcoming and pretty into making people feel accepted. There are those exceptions out there.
Just an outlier, but they don't really. They can pay your bills if they want you to wear premium leather. That's what I see it. But since they don't pay your bills, then you don't have to give them any weight. You don't have to give them any thought. So just do it.
Completely agree. We all start in exactly the same place, and as Cal well knows, and I'm sure he's told Scott, last night he and I were talking about me coming up with a fantastic life plan to try and clear my existing debt. And do you know what? Some of that debt has been caused by leather, and being in my early 20s and thinking, yeah, do you know what? I really want that. I can go on a MasterCard. And yeah, some of it was really nice gear. But again, like Scott said, I've bought loads of stuff over the years that didn't fit, wasn't quite right, or I didn't love. And I'm still paying that off. And I would much rather have the less expensive stuff, a lot of which I actually prefer to some of my more expensive stuff, and have the money. And having saved for it, it would have been much better. And you know what? The stuff I've saved for has meant more as well, because I've always been someone who would choose a new leather jacket over a new dishwasher any day, which is why I'm using a 20-year-old washing machine at the moment. But it hasn't brought me any more joy having the really expensive stuff, other than that moment of going, oh my God, it's finally arrived. I can't honestly say it's any better.
I have a challenge for you, Tom, for you, Scott, and for everybody else out there watching. If you're on Instagram, if you're on Facebook, whatever social media platform you are on, I challenge all of you to post a photo today in something that is not premium gear. Maybe it was your first jacket, your first shirt, but let's spread that message out there that it is not about having top of the line gear. It's simply about expressing yourself as a person who loves gear. So I challenge all of you who are watching today, go out there and share photos, share your stories of you in whatever gear you do have that's not top of the line, so that these people can all see. Just embrace gear as a whole. So that's my challenge. I'm going to do it myself here as soon as we get off the call.
And I don't want to give away all my fantastic secrets, but I will give this one away because it is brilliant. And so many people go, oh, I'd never thought of that. Facebook Marketplace is an absolutely epic place to get gear. It's a fantastic place to get gear. Obviously, it's not going to be Mr. B jeans. It's going to be, classic bike jackets and, leather jeans, stuff like that. But I have got some brilliant stuff off it over the years, and people sell stuff without knowing what it's worth as well.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm bored and I'm sitting waiting for a train or whatever, first thing I do is scroll through Marketplace, which is how I ended up driving to Hull for my TT leather jacket. And for US people who don't know where Hull is, it's in the north and I live in the south. It's a long way to drive, but it's worth it, and it's a fantastic source. If you're on a budget, Facebook Marketplace is way better than eBay.
Yeah, exactly. What real quick, just turning some focus back to some of the comments and the questions that are in the group. Pardon me, real quick. It keeps refreshing on me, so I found a comment and then all of a sudden it disappears. As far as like connecting with people who are into gear, and like I said, we were talking earlier about people who live in rural communities, or maybe they're just starting off and they're having a hard time reaching out to people that are in gear. they truly recommend joining online groups. And I don't mean to self-promote here by any means, but if you haven't yet joined the Gear365 Facebook groups, or if you're not using the hashtag on Instagram, but really the Facebook groups, there are some incredible conversations on there, and we have conversations like this all the time. It's about, you know, finding your first pieces in gear, stepping out of the house in gear, meeting fellow gearheads all over the world. And I really implore you, if you're having a hard time finding people, to start there. It's a great way to connect with people all around the world, and I've met so many of you because of this.
And I grew up in a absolutely tiny rural community in the English countryside. I grew up in a village of 60 people.
Wow.
And it was only when I went away to university that I got to meet people for the first time properly and experience it all. And up until then, it had all been online, and it was still really valuable. Still helped me, and the internet was much more in its infancy back then, and it was still World Leatherman, which later grew into Recon, and MSN chat rooms. You know, we have so much more now.
Thomas, are there any questions or anything in the group that you'd like to field?
Well, as I didn't put my contact lenses in, it might be quite challenging for me.
All right, no, let me. I'll just go through here. I want to make sure that we're addressing everybody that's come in. Guy16, incredible conversation. Thanks for all your great work. Thank you for being here. Nicholas says, leather things are expensive always, but it would be considered okay if you can wear it for years. And well, it's definitely an investment. And
yeah, absolutely. And it holds its value.
You have a friend for life, so it doesn't wear out like other things that you can spend the equivalent money on.
Other friends.
Yeah.
I would say the biggest challenge that I've had with it through the years is that my weight has gone up and down. So I had waited for years. I'd saved up for years to get my first ever set of langlets. And I've got a pair of breeches now that don't fit me anymore. They're way too baggy on me, which is, you know, that's good. That means I've lost weight, but it's expensive to spend that kind of money on gear just a couple years ago that I can't even wear anymore. So, yeah, it's an ongoing challenge. That's for darn sure. And for the longest time, I was wearing just a $100 pair of leather jeans, just a real basic pair of leather jeans that I found. I wasn't wearing premium gear either, and here I was trying to do Gear365. In fact, a lot of my videos on here, I'm wearing a pair of Gap leather jeans from the year 1999. So it's not about having top-of-the-line leather. It really isn't. Just scrolling through some of the comments here. Pup owner's response to people who challenge him for not wearing the right kind of gear says, buy them for me, and then we'll see.
Good luck, Sunbeam.
Real quick, the other thing I want to touch on, and Harry, if you've got any information on this, there are, again, gear meetups all around the world, and they're most likely not going to happen in rural communities. You're probably going to have to do some traveling for them. Lord knows we did. Thomas, I mean, you just went to London for Pride. But where I was going with this is we just had a Gear365 meetup in Chicago at IML. There was a big Gear365 meetup at World Pride in New York just a couple weeks ago. There was one just last night in Sydney, Australia, and a bunch of folks came together in gear. And I think Harry is trying to coordinate one in Berlin at Folsom. So I know these events are not cheap. I know it's hard to get to them. But if you're feeling isolated in your community, in the same way you save up for gear, save up for one of these trips and try to unite with these folks and step out of your comfort zone a little bit, get to know people. And it's an incredible experience when you do.
And I save every month to do it. To go to Berlin, I put aside, I have 2 envelopes. One is Folsom accommodation, one is Folsom travel. And I put aside probably more money than I can afford every month to do it. And it does require some sacrifice. There are things that I don't do so that I can do that. But I was talking to a friend the other day, and I described it as the absolute highlight of my calendar every year, and it really is. And on my own YouTube, when I described what Folsom was like when I got back from it, you can make it any of these events. You can make them as sexual as social as you like. And for me, it's very social. It's just like going on a boys' holiday with your mates in the sunshine, drinking too much, smoking too much, and being with so many people who are just like you. And it really does make you feel like part of something bigger. It's something that's worth making some sacrifices for, if you're able to. It really is, because it does make a difference. And I would be really surprised if someone went and regretted it, because I certainly didn't. And it took some real persuasion, both from Callum and Scott, and some other friends, to make me go for the first time. And I'm just sorry I didn't do it sooner.
You break through that ice, I think. But for someone who's not as extroverted, it might help to go with a friend, find a friend to go and have a roommate with, and at least you have that safety there. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, you can go back to your place, or you can hang out with this person, and then you just open up gradually. Mm-hmm. So that would help a lot if you can find someone to go with.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I would never have gone by myself. I went with a very long-term friend of mine, in fact, probably one of my oldest leather friends. And we ended up as part of a huge group of people. There were about 10 of us in the end, who stuck together through the whole thing and had a fantastic time. And it was friends and friends of friends and people we knew in common. And it all just ended up being a very fun mess. I have such fantastically fond memories of that. And I would say it's so far outside my comfort zone. It's so far outside my comfort zone. I'm not terribly extrovert. I'm sure I've got all kinds of terrible psychological messes hidden in my head. But if I can have a nice time, believe me, anyone can. And like I said in my own YouTube video, can't recommend it enough. Any kind of event, it's so good feeling like you're part of something bigger and you're with your own kind.
Yeah. And you know, the funny thing is in doing Gear365 on here, on social media, there is this impression that I'm extremely extroverted, and you know, but like you, I tend to be very shy when we go to these events. It's until I really get to know you one-on-one where I feel like I can open up a little bit, and that's just kind of my personality. I've accepted that through the years. But like you were saying, if you can go to this and allow yourself to experience this, you walk away feeling this tremendous high. Like, I did this, I went to this, I allowed myself to be a part of this. Not only did I survive, but now I've got the courage to do it again. And you'll see it's very similar to when you wear your first pieces of gear out of the house for the first time. Like, wow, I did it, I survived, I felt great. And it helps you to do a little bit more every single time.
Well, there's a video that I sent to you guys on WhatsApp, which I watched back the other day, actually, and it was the day after I got back from Berlin, and I'm describing my time, and I've actually sent that to a few other people since, despite it being aimed at you, because it was just, you can see the sort of manic excitement in my eyes, feeling like I'd been admitted, I suppose, into something, and really feel like that I belonged.
Yeah.
And there are so many avenues in life where I really don't feel like I particularly belong. Whereas our community, our people, I really do feel like I belong to that, and I'm one of us. And it's so not a difficult club to get into. It is inclusive, and I like the fact that it does generally feel much less judgmental and much friendlier. And like I said when I was talking to the gay couple I met yesterday who weren't into leather, you almost have a free pass, you know, with other leather guys. You automatically have that thing in common. You automatically are part of the club. We are a group, a tribe, and yeah, absolutely love it. I love that feeling of community. I'd be a bit bereft. I mean, if leather wasn't in my life, I'd have far fewer friends, which is, again, probably a sad comment on me, but so many of my closest mates have been through leather. I wouldn't know how to meet gay men if it wasn't for the leather community.
Yeah. If I honestly, and we've had this conversation before, I mean, we grew up in a time where being gay was not necessarily something that was accepted, and we were, you know, you would be outcast by your entire schools, by your family, by your friends, you know, when you're 15, 16 years old and being gay. It's thankfully a lot of that is changing in many parts of the world. But I remember being like 14 years old and having not only these attractions for people of the same sex, but attractions for like these men in leather, like these moto cop officers or bikers. And I remember thinking, God, there's something so sick and so wrong with me. And I remember just praying to try to, you know, be attracted to women, be attracted to normal things. And thank God I have reached a point in my life where if I had a pill I could take that would transform me into being that heteronormative person, and nothing, I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm bashing anything being straight, because there's a lot of people who are straight and into gear, and a lot of them are probably watching right now. But if I had to take a pill that would make me straight, married with 2.4 kids, and completely vanilla, there's no way in hell I would change. No way in hell I'd change. Because one, I would miss an incredible partner who has been supportive of me all throughout my journey. But like you were talking about, it's the experience of being connected with so many other gearheads around the world. It's something so primal. It's so spiritual. It's mental. It's sexual. We understand each other. Like Thomas, you and I have never met face to face, but yet we know each other on such a deep level because of our gear. And it's the same thing with so many people in this chat room right now or on social media. I may never meet most of you face to face, but we're all connected in a very deep way because of our chosen skin.
Absolutely, and I've always loved that expression, because I think it covers so much more than it's not just wearing a leather jacket. I mean, like you said, it feels like it's, you know, DNA. I just can't imagine life without it. It's been such a fundamental part of me since I was about 5 years old. That's the earliest memory I can have of leather. And I remember even then wanting a motorcycle jacket at that age. I mean, I'd love to sit down with a psychologist and find out what it's all about, and how that stemmed and where it started. But yeah, it's so powerful. I can't imagine removing it from me, because it fills a huge part of my brain. It really does. A lot of my waking thoughts when I'm walking through town, if there's someone out the corner of my eye wearing a leather jacket, my head just
instant
flips.
radar, rubbernecking, yeah.
You know, you see someone in the supermarket, and you're like, oh, I like that jacket. Wonder where that's from. And like someone on here called William, in the comments, I did spot, went, oh, I really like your shirt. Where's that from? And that's what I do. I do that on Instagram. By the way, it's a Warsaw Leather 1 on Instagram, if you want to know William. But I do that all the time on Instagram. I see someone wearing something like, I really like that. I'm thinking that right now about Scott's polo shirt. I really want that. And I can't imagine my life not having that in it. I kind of wonder what my brain would be filled with. I mean, probably really useful things like literature and art and politics, but it's so fundamental. I can't imagine removing it. I would never take a pill. Just like you said, I would never take a pill to change that, because I would no longer be Tom. I genuinely don't know who I'd be. I've wondered who I'd be if I was straight. And
heteronormative, 98% of the other people. We live in the same world, but we have a parallel culture inside that very few people actually know about or are afraid of. And I think that's what makes us unique, and that's what makes the world really special, is that we're not all the same, and we enjoy things that are intense to us that are not intense to them, or they don't even know they're intense to them. But I do like the fact that we're not like everybody else. I don't like when things are always the same and boring. You know, the conventional lifestyle is not necessarily. And once you love yourself, you find out that you should be, that you're actually happy with yourself. You don't really want to go back to what everybody else is doing.
Right there, what you just said is key. If I can put just a real quick period on this one subject right here, what it boils down to is accepting who you are. and getting to that point in your life where you're proud of who you are. And that takes time. It takes all of us time. There are people, and we just had a fascinating conversation with the friend that we were talking about earlier that we went on a motorcycle ride with and took photos with yesterday. He is in his mid 40s and only just discovered leather about 2 years ago. Never had any sort of draw to it until about a year or two ago when he was exposed to it. And it's been like a light switch for him. And now he's a full-on Tom of Finland Leatherman, and it's completely transformed his life. But I think if he were here right now, he would say 1000% for the better. Real quick, just to kind of move on to one final subject, we should start to wrap this up. I don't want to go put a message out there that everything in the world of kink and gear is sunshine and rainbows, because there have been plenty of times where people have gone out to events, they've gone to bars, or even on the online world where they have felt rejected. Like Leather Spain had mentioned a few moments ago, he had had comments thrown his way that he wasn't wearing the right gear, he wasn't wearing premium gear. Once upon a time, I was close to 90 pounds heavier than I am right now, and I didn't turn a lot of heads in a bar. I didn't get a lot of attention in a bar. There are times where you will put yourself out there and you will feel judged, or you'll feel like you fit in. But I do want you to know, although I've had those experiences, I'm sure you too have had those experiences to a certain point where you felt like you couldn't break into a certain niche, or there was a group you were trying so hard to be a part of and maybe you didn't get the time of day from them. It may hurt and it may suck and you may feel rejection, but it is the exception to the rule. You just haven't met the right people yet, because believe me, the gear community as a whole throughout the world is filled with some very cool, very caring, very loving people. And it just takes a while to find them. And once you do, you realize you kind of found your global chosen family. It just takes time.
I completely agree. And I'm a desperately, desperately, desperately uncool person, as you are, in real life. And I like the fact that in our world, in leather, that it is a bit, to me, it feels a bit more of a level playing field. Yes, there are people with like the most fantastic gear and they've got the most fantastic bodies and all the rest of it. And, you know, you walk past someone and you think, my God, you were just made to be encased in leather. But I don't necessarily feel any more inferior just because they look amazing, because I feel it's a bit more of a level playing field because we do share something in common. There are people out there who just wear leather or go to certain events because they know they look good, and now kink is quite cool. You know, wearing a chest harness and a jock and a pair of chaps to an event, now it is quite cool. Whereas when I was sort of 18, it was still a bit sort of dark and underground. But I do find it less intimidating because we are all the same. I always think, like, when we're in a club or at an event, they are my people. And yeah, there are different tribes and different groups, just like there are for everything. You know, it's like the lunchroom at work. But the strong likelihood is you share a lot more in common with them than you ever realised. And it definitely makes me feel a lot more comfortable, because I'm not an extrovert. I'm not fantastically confident, like we were saying earlier. But yeah, especially at an event, if I've had a glass of red wine, I'm all over it. I feel much more like, if I'm in full leather, I'm twice the man I am when I'm in jeans and t-shirt.
So we should probably start to wrap this up. Before we do, there's a lot of people in this room that we have not yet had a chance to say hello to. My friends, Sport Bike Sweden, two really awesome guys. I love them dearly. I hope we see them soon. Leatherboy Kyle. Some really great comments in the room here. What I want to do before we sign off, folks, throw a few questions into the room, and then I'm going to challenge each of us to spend no more than 30 seconds on these questions, and we'll move on. Let's see if we can kind of get through some questions in a fiery blaze before we sign off. Are you down for that?
Sure.
All right, Room. So throw us a few last questions here that maybe we didn't see, and we'll try to get through them as fast as we can because we don't want to keep everybody all night. One of the ones I saw just a few moments ago was about gloves, and do you have any ideas on where we can find like inexpensive pairs of gloves for people who are just starting out?
Yes, I do. Tactical365.com. It's a military surplus website, and they do airsoft stuff. They're the cheapest I've found for Damascus gloves. That's my tip.
Nice. First pair of boots to get.
I would say that's a tough one, but it depends on what you like. But my first pair was a pair of harness boots. I just like the looks of them. I like the looks that they look like a body harness, and you can get a pair for maybe 150 bucks, and that's a great place to start. It's a way to wear your fetish every day without being explicit about it.
Yeah, I have a pair of like Durango harness boots that I've had for years that I maybe spent $100 on, and they look every bit just like Wesco's, but it's not the big brand name prices, but you can get some great looking boots out there. I also am a huge fan of cowboy boots, and you can get a really decent pair of cowboy boots for like $100. They're not going to be gorgeous Sendras, but they're going to do the trick. All right, next one, down-filled gear, leather furniture. We've got full-on leather furniture in the living room.
We have leather furniture. We made sure we got leather
just
furniture.
About here, if you stand back real quick, like every stick of furniture in this house is leather. But believe me, Cheers. It took us a long time to save up for that, and we are so fanatical whenever anybody comes over to the house, like, don't put your boots on the furniture.
Take your keys out of your pocket.
I know a lot of folks that are into down gear as well. That can be really sexy. Thomas, you get to do the next one here. We've been talking too much.
Okay, actually, I'm going to go back to Kyle. Kyle put one earlier. He did, it was essentially, what's the one piece of gear you can never part with? And I had a conversation with someone the other day, very similar. House is burning down. Which piece of gear do you save? And with that,
he actually did. His house literally
just about.
Thanksgiving, what, 4 years ago? You had a fire, yeah,
in the basement,
like right under his gear closet too. What would you grab?
Well, I actually keep my Perfecto by the front door, especially on a hanger, in case it does burn down. For me, it would be my 519 Perfecto, because I was looking for one for years, secondhand on eBay, and finally found one. And yeah, everything else I feel like could. Lange still have my measurements on file. All the other stuff, it doesn't feel quite as personal, whereas that I would be gutted about. That is the one thing I just save. What about you?
Well, mercifully, I have not had a fire in my house. Let's keep that tradition rolling, but I would immediately jump in and grab my Shot Perfecto, my Langlets, and a couple of the race suits. And because
lucky it's a small fire then, isn't it?
Well,
time you'd
need. Again, I mean, leather is something you work your whole life to save up for and buy. None of that came easy. That was a lot of scripting and saving and budgeting. So
I'm trying to tell the insurance agent, oh, I lost like 20 pairs of jackets and 15 pairs of jackets. It doesn't really go over so well.
We have, honest to God, talked about, do we need to talk to our insurance agent and talk to them about being leather collectors and show our collection to them? Because legitimately, if the house flooded, we had water damage in our house, what, 9 months ago, and our house has been under construction since. If we had a fire, we would be out thousands of dollars instantly in leather alone. So I don't know, it's something actually.
When you travel with gear, I mean, I take out separate insurance for the leather. When I go to Folsom, I think it's up to $5,000, which UK money is what, probably about $7,000, because to replace it all would be nightmarish, absolutely nightmarish. Yeah, no, I think separate insurance is the way to go. But I'd have to have a funeral for all the gear that got burned. I mean, it would be tragic.
Well, because it's
photographs I could get over, but
it's a deep part of yourself. Christopher Collette would grab his dive computer and tank. He's my scuba diver. He's my dive master. I love him. All right, Thomas, question for you real quick. I just lost it, damn it. All right, here it is from Richard Rees. A lot of leather guys smoke. but he himself does not. Do you think it adds to the look?
Do you know what, actually? Yeah, I'm going to be a bit biased. I mean, yes, I like smoke. It doesn't bother me remotely if someone doesn't. I like smoke with lots of different stuff. Skinhead, Scally, which is losing its popularity in the UK, but I'm still into because I like to think of myself as a bit retro. Yeah, no, I can see it enhances. For some people, it's a bit of an accessory. For some people, it's a very key part of it. But I've been with and been very close to leather men who don't smoke. And equally, I know there are leather men who haven't wanted to be with me because I do. So no, I don't think it's intrinsic. But for me, it adds something. Well, because you used to smoke and you gave up, didn't you?
I did give it up. I will be the first to admit, I think it looks incredibly sexy to see a guy smoking a cigar or a cigarette. That being said, forgive me because I don't want to sound like I'm fetish shaming at all. As a non-smoker, the smell freaking disgusts me, and I want my leather to smell like leather. Once upon a time, I loved the look of going out to the bar, and this is when you can still smoke in the United States, way back in the day. But I loved, sitting there with a cigarette out of my mouth and just feeling like a badass with my motorcycle jacket, and I felt cool as hell. But I gave it up for health reasons, and I still find the look incredibly sexy. It's just after you've been a non-smoker for a while, it's really hard to get back into it. And I love like the bluff socials and things that we have here, but Scott and I both will go, and the patio is filled with so many cigar smokers who look fucking awesome. But then for like 3 or 4 days after that, Scott and I are like, like we're coughing it out. So it's a weird balance. It's not good for you, but it's sexy as fuck. I loved, by the way, I keep losing the comments. Going back to the fires, like the first thing you would do, Duty Belt's comment was awesome. Step 1, put on your fire turnout gear and respirator. Best response of the day. Best response of the day. I thought real leather is non-flammable. Not quite.
Carbon-based material.
If you just watched that video I posted on YouTube about using leather sheen on your video, yeah, probably not going to do much for fire retardant. Any other final questions here before we sign off for the evening? Zocon, I think I'm saying that correctly, says they feel reluctant to show their face and their gear simultaneously. They live in a situation where they're unable to do so and feel a little bit less of a real gearhead that way.
It's all in your, it's basically all in your own time. Like if you feel like you don't ever want to come out like that, then that's, that's your choice. I mean, it's whatever you feel comfortable with. No one's forcing you to come out of the leather closet. And if you feel just comfortable wearing it at home, that's perfectly fine. And sharing
it's for you
in a mirror, that's totally fine. I mean, it's just little incremental things. If you ever want to meet a friend or something like that, wearing a leather jacket, that that would be a first small step. But it just takes time. It's like learning how to walk. If you ever feel like you want to actually get outside your place and wear it, you just like baby steps, one little thing at a time. Maybe wear a pair of boots or something, go around the block or something. But if you ever don't even want to do that, then it's perfectly fine as well. So you're not any less of a gearhead because of that.
Sport Bike Sweden, I love your answer. The first thing, and they're such great sport bikers. I love them so much. Their answer to the fire question is they would rescue all the bikes and the suits from the garage. Step 1 had better be you better rescue that cute little puppy you call Rossi. He's a character in and of his own right. Yeah, my cat ran out the house, when they saw the smoke coming from the basement. It's like ran right out. Coldest day of the year too.
Black Wolf Harris has just asked a question that you and I have actually talked about in the past. If any of you should pass away, God forbid, would you want to be laid to rest in your best leather, or would you rather it went to a close friend? And I, weirdly enough, actually a very close leather friend of mine died recently, died last month. A really good man, really, really really good man, loved him, lived in the US. And one of the first things I thought about was what's going to happen to his kit, because I know how he felt about it. And it did worry me on his behalf, because it was a hugely important part of him. And I have in my will, I have a letter of wishes for what happens to my leather gear, because the people who would end up clearing out my flat would have absolutely no idea of its significance or its value. My family or some straight friends who still don't realise the extent. And I would never, I wouldn't want to be laid to rest in it, because I'd rather it went on and lived with someone else. The idea of my leather rotting in the ground with me, not into that at all.
No.
And my will actually states that I want to be either dressed in old clothes that are no use to anyone, or wrapped in a sheet, because I see it as a waste. And for my gear, either to be given to friends, or to be sold, or to be given to people. The people to whom it is left. One of them actually is exactly the same size as me, and I strongly suspect he'd keep most of it, which I'd love. And the rest of it, I want it to live on without me. I love the fact my name's in my Langlets, and the Langlets will definitely outlive me, provided I don't have that fictional fire we talked about. And I really like the idea of it carrying on, and living beyond. And yeah, I can't think of anything worse actually than being buried in my kit, because I would just hate to think of it not being cared for.
Can I touch on this for a quick second? We were just actually talking about Glenn Hughes. He was the original Leatherman character in The Village People. And what I love about Glenn Hughes is he was so proud to be the Leatherman in the group. And he wore his leathers everywhere he went. And he died of cancer, I want to say it was
about 50, yeah,
in 2001. And because that leather was such a deep part of him, he requested to be buried in his leathers. And that has stayed with me these last 18 years. I've always found that to be such a deep expression of who he was. And on that note, just yesterday, our friend Neil that we were riding with, we went out to Placerville. Our friend Neil is an avid collector of retro bar vests and retro leather jackets from people who were in the leather community in the 60s, 70s, 80s. Many of these people perished in the AIDS crisis. But he's retrieved their jackets, and he proudly wears these bar vests from bars that aren't even around anymore as a way of continuing on their legacy. And he's so passionate about it. It's beautiful. And a perfect example of that, the photos you're going to see today on the Gear365 group, Neil is posting them. Photo I post last night, he's wearing a vintage motocop jacket. We date, it goes back to the 60s and 70s, but he's continuing on the leather stories that his predecessors had started. I would love to think that my leather will continue on long after me. And what a great gift, if leather's such a deep part of all of us, that we get to live on through our gear,
And my boots are from a gentleman who died during the AIDS crisis, and his partner kept them long after he died, and gave them to me, because he wanted them to live on and be a bit of him. And that was very touching. And I do, every single time I put them on, I saw a picture of him, very handsome guy. So obviously one of us. And I like the fact that I'm getting to live some of that for him. In a way, it does kind of feel like a tribute, and I kind of feel like that would feel like it for me. I would love to think that someone who couldn't afford a Langlets or whatever got my one. If I died, touch wood, I obviously don't want to die, but I would like to think that someone could benefit from my gear and live it for me, you know, and do the things that I wasn't getting to do with it. So no, I have like I said, I have a very special letter in my will which no one has seen, and will be a great surprise to some people when it gets read. But I'm dead. I won't care. And I personally, for me, I believe when I'm in a box in the ground that I'm just organic recycling. I don't really feel that the body is just a vessel for the soul. I don't really care what the body looks like, what happens to it after I'm dead. I'm an organ donor. I'm donated to medical science. I'm really not that bothered. But my gear, I have much more concern about than my physical self.
Tom, the room is filling up with sympathy for you and for the loss of your friend. And Scott and I both send you our deepest condolences. And I'll tell you, when I first moved to California, the San Francisco Eagle had closed, and mercifully it was in the process of reopening. But I remember when the San Francisco Eagle closed, it sent shockwaves all across the country and probably even the world. Like, how is it a city like San Francisco, like such an iconic city for the world of leather, could lose its leather bar? And it's not just a place you go and get a drink. And there were leather bars all throughout San Francisco, right? But you think of the people that frequented these bars in the 70s and the 80s. In their time, it was not legal to be gay, to get into sodomy. And
Not only that, when they died from the AIDS crisis, their ashes were spread around the bar, so their essence is still there in the bricks underground in that bar, in that space. So to tear it down and put a condo or a tech company in its place was, it doesn't seem right.
They were able to save the Eagle. It's since reopened. And there have been many times I've set foot beyond that leather curtain and gone into that bar and been very mindful of all of the souls before me that made it okay for me to be into leather and be who I am. And now it's up to all of us, whether you're new to gear, whatever age you are, if not for yourself, but for the rest of the world, to show the rest of the world that fetish, kink, gear, being gay, being non-binary, being transgender, being who you are is incredibly important. It's incredibly special, and it's perfectly okay.
Totally agree.
Mic drop. But I suppose it's been about an hour and a half. Should we start to wrap up here?
Yep, good idea.
What I would say real quick, and again, I'm so sorry for the self-promotion. I'm really not trying to do the self-promotion thing, but again, a real good first place for people to meet other folks into gear are the Gear365 Facebook groups. There is the Gear365 group is all gender expressions. There is a men's discretion group that's for people who identify as male. And I'm always open to opening up other versions of Gear365 too. I want all people and all moods to feel like they belong and have a place. But there are some really incredible conversations about coming into your own as a gear person and going out into the world and accepting and loving yourself for who you are. And then somebody else, I think it was Johnny, had mentioned, Black Wolf Harris had mentioned Fet Life. And there again, there's all orientations on there, but it's a huge fetish group and a great way to meet people from all parts of the world. So,
and yeah, obviously it goes without saying, a few people have said it, and Recon again, it might present itself as purely a cruising sort of website. But I've met some of my closest friends through Recon. I really have, and it's been a huge part of my life for very, very many years.
Yeah.
And yeah,
our
getting onto any kind of profile site is massively helpful. Some lend themselves better to socialization than others, but yeah, I've found both Facebook and Recon absolutely fantastic.
I'm just looking at this chat room right here, and there are countless people that Scott and I have already met offline, and some of them we've had the pleasure of even being able to host in our home or to be able to meet them when they've been in California. People that we would not otherwise know if it wasn't for our gear desires. And what I love is I may primarily be into leather, but it's not just leather, it's all sorts of fetishes and gear, and I love that variety.
Absolutely, and I think a lot of us are a bit multi-kinkable. Is kinkable a word? But yeah, I have a lot of gear interests. It's not just leather. There's all sorts of things that get me off. It's just that leather is the definitely the main one. If I had to choose one, it will always be the Perfecto I saved from the house fire. All the rest of it I could live without.
Well, everybody, I think it is probably our time to sign off, and I would like to really thank, there's a couple of people I'd love to thank, and I should have done this at the top of the call. Two very good friends of mine from another YouTube channel on here called Pepper Tree Villa. It's not a gear YouTube channel. Their primary focus is on like Disney, and they love to do things in their kitchen. They're two really good friends of mine. They were the ones that helped me set up this Google Hangout for today to be able to do this live chat. And if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be able to do this. So to my friends at Pepper Tree Villa, thank you. And Tom Perfectolad, my husband, Scott Bluff Biker, and to all of you, there have been so many great comments in this chat today. It means the world to us that you are all here and partaking at whatever experience level you are at, whatever part of the world you're at, whatever your life's journey may be. Thank you for being here.
Absolutely, and it was lovely to see so many familiar people. Badass UK trying to make me laugh in the comments in there. He's a very close friend, and yeah, Kyle, who's just popped back in. It's what we were talking about earlier with the community thing. You know, there are so many people that we know, and some of them we get to meet in real life, but some are just online. But it doesn't make the connection any less strong.
There's one other thing I wanted to mention, and that is going back to my challenge that I threw out maybe about a half an hour to an hour ago. One of the big points of conversation from today was not having premium gear. Most of us did not have premium gear for a good part of our leather journeys. So if you're watching this, and I'm going to partake in this, I'm going to go out on Instagram and Facebook, and I'm going to post photos of myself in my regular everyday gear, like my Wilson's leather jacket, maybe that $100 pair of jeans that I was talking about that I got used that had to get me through my weight loss. I'll post that. But all of you, go out there and post your non-premium gear and help encourage people. Like, it's just about wearing what you've got and not going for things that are too unattainable, because it takes time.
I will do the same.
So
it's liberating. So encourage you, baby steps or in the house or full out in public. It's all good as long as you wear it and it makes you feel good.
Everybody, thank you so much for watching. And again, I hope I see you out there on the Facebook groups or on Instagram. If you'd like to follow Thomas, he is Perfectolad on Instagram, here on YouTube, and on Recon, if I'm not mistaken, yes?
Yep, brand synergy.
What's that? Oh yeah, brand synergy. I got to get that going. I'm like Cal Rider 365 here and there. And unfortunately, there's other Cal Riders out there, so except no substitutions. And then, of course, Bluff Biker, who is Bluff Biker CA on Recon as well. So, all right, everybody, enjoy your evenings, your afternoons, whatever part of the world you are in. Thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to doing another Gear 365 live very soon. And I would love if any of you have any topics for conversation or ideas for things that we can do. I'd love to be able to take those on, and I'd love to be able to do that with various members of our community. So throw them down in the comments. Talk to you soon. Tom.
Bye. Lovely speaking to you.
My leather brother, thank you. I'm just so glad that you and I have our connection like this, and that we have our connection with so many awesome folks out there in the world. So thank you.
I'll speak to you soon.
Have a good night. Take it easy.
Night. Bye-bye.